Good morning, Year 5. It is the 6th of October today. I hope you're all well. Remember not to do any work if you're not feeling very well. Some of you've had your parents saying they've watched this in bed, or they're feeling a bit poorly, so they didn't do much, they just watched the videos. If you're not feeling up to it, please don't feel you have to do anything, okay? The one that might be nice to catch up when you're feeling up to it is listening to the House of Chicken Legs, just so that you're up with our story, and we've just had 2 massive cliffhangers. So that's the only one that I would say maybe catch up with. But if you're really feeling poorly, don't feel you have to do the work. Okay, so we're going to go back now. We finished with negative numbers. We're going to go back to what you were doing with Mrs. Prosser just for the last day, which is working with decimals. And today we're going to be rounding, just like we did with whole numbers, but we're going to be rounding with decimals today. Okay, so first of all, just have a look at this statement and tell me whether it's always, sometimes, or never true. So you always round up when the last digit is 5. I wonder if I can catch any of you out with this statement. Okay, I'm going to give you a number and we're going to work from there and see if it's right. So think about this number, 2.15. So that's 2 wholes, 1/10 and 5/100. We're going to think about rounding that to the nearest whole number and the nearest tenth. It does end with a 5, so does that mean it's always going to round up? Let's look at it when it's the nearest whole number. So the first thing we do is find our landmarks. With 2.15, our nearest whole numbers, so the lower one, remember you stick to the one you're already on. Don't fall into that trap of going one lower and going even lower. You stick to the one you're already on. So our lower number is 2 when it's a whole number, and the next one is 3, which means our midway point is 2.5. 0.5 is the same as a half. So I would then think, is 2.15 this half or this half? Well, if I think of this, I'm going to put my 0 back in just to help me. So if I think of that in terms of 2.50, 15 is lower than 50. So it's going to be in this first half here, which means it would round down to 2. So this number, although it ends in a 5, it actually rounds down, which means that statement was sometimes true. I wonder if any of you put always because you know a 5 rounds up. Well, in this case, we're not looking at the 5 column, the hundredths column, we're looking at the tenths column, which is only a 1, so it's going to round down. So it doesn't always round up. But what we're going to do now is help you to think about that in terms of money. So 2.15 is like saying £2.15. So is that closer to £2 or £3? Which is what we've just done on the number line. It's closer to £2. It's only 15p more than this, where it's 85p away from this. So it rounds down. Okay, let's go back to that same number, but now we're going to round it to the nearest tenth. So our 2 landmarks now, if we've got 2.15, we're looking at the tenths column. So we stick to the one we're already on. The one we're already on is 2.1. And again, just to make it easier for myself, I've put in the 0. So it will be 2.10, which means the one above it is 2.20. So halfway between those is 2.15. Think of it in terms of halfway between 10 and 20. It's 15. Putting that 0 back on the end does help us here. So 2.15 is actually dead in the middle. That's the number we're rounding, isn't it? It's dead in the middle, which means it would round up to 2.2 in this case. So yes, in this case it does round up. Remember, the other way you can do it is to look at the column you're working on, look to the column on the right. If it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes down. If it's a 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9, it goes up. But you've got to know those landmarks first. Again, 2.15, is it closer to £2.10 or £2.20? It's dead in the middle. It's 5p away from both. Okay, we're going to have a look at this question together, and it's exactly the same idea as the ones we do in our fluency when we've got a number that's been rounded to 9,000 or 12,000. But this case, we're only rounding to 4. So let's look at it together and then you can pause and have a think. Kate rounded a number to the nearest whole number and the answer was 4. Which numbers with 2 decimal places could she have started with? So 2 decimal places, we're looking at something point something something. Those are the numbers we want to start with. The answer is going to be 4. Just pause and see if you can have a think. Okay, so I already know one of my landmarks. I already know that it's 4 and everything's been rounded to that. But I'm just going to think, here's my 4. I've got the wrong pointer up. There we go. Here's my 4. But I'm just going to think, well, what would have been below that? It would be 3. We'd also have 5 up the other end. Okay, so in the middle of 3 and 4 would be 3.5. Anything above that is going to round up because it ends in a 5. Remember, 3.49 would go down. Think of it in terms of it being 3.50. So think of it as a 50. 49 would go down, but 50 or 50 would go up. And then the other end, well, I know that 4.5 or 4.50, well, that would round up to 5. So it's got to be 4.49 or lower. So anything in this section or this section would round to 4. So just have a think. Give me some options. There are lots. Okay, so your options could be 3.51, 3.52, 3.53, 3.54, etc., all the way up to 3.99. But then you can also round down. So you've got 4.01, 4.02, 4.03, all the way up to 4.49. Anything in between those numbers would round to 4. So you've got lots and lots of options there. If it helps, get rid of the decimal point and think of it as 351, 352, and this as 400. Lots and lots of options. Okay. Rounding to the nearest tenth. So you can ask yourself these questions. Which tenths is your number in between? That would be your 2 landmarks. What's halfway between these tenths? Finding the midpoint. Where would you place your number on that number line? What's the previous tenth and the next tenth? That's the same as the first question. That's finding your landmarks again. Which is the closest tenth? So let's look at one together. 2.18, we're rounding to the nearest tenth, which is this one. So the one below it means we stick to the one we're already on, which is 2.1. And I'm going to put the 0 in because it makes it easier, 2.10, which means the one above it will be 2.20. So my midway point, think of it as what's halfway between 10 and 20. It's 15. So it'll be 2.15. Remember, we say the decimal places separately. We don't say 2.15, we say 2.15. Well, 2.18, I've just done exactly what I said not to do. 2.18, sorry, would be on this side. It's 18 is bigger than 15, so 18 is bigger than 15. So it's this side, which means it rounds up to 2.2 or 2.20. Okay, have a look at what I've just done there, and then I'm going to give you some to have a go at yourself. So pause the video and have a go at these. Okay, just to give you the answers so you can have a look for yourself. The first one we've just done would be 2.2 or 2.20. This one would also round up, because it's in the middle, to 2.2. Oh, sorry about my writing. This one would round down to 2.1. This one's interesting because you've got the 0. It actually rounds down to 3. Your 2 landmarks would have been 3 or 3.0 and 3.1. So it rounds down to 3, or you might have put 3.0. Again, this one's tricky. This one would round up to 9 or 9.0. The 2 landmarks would be 8.9 or 9. So that one was tricky. Whereas this one would be 8.9. So those are your answers. Okay, now we're going to have a look at rounding to the nearest whole number. So same questions, but this time you're looking at the 2 rather than the 1. So for landmarks, you stick to the one we're already on. So that would be 2, which means the next one will be 3. In the middle, we've got 2.5. And I can immediately see that 2.1 is on this side. Or the other way is to look at the column you're working on, work out your landmarks, then look at the column on the right, and if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes up. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it goes down. Okay, so I'm going to give you some more questions to have a go at, and then I'll give you the answers. Remember, this time we're rounding to the nearest whole number. And just a question to think about, does the 100th digit make a difference when rounding to the whole number? Okay, so pause the video if you haven't done. Right, so the answers here, quite interesting. I wonder if this confused you. 2, 2, 2, you guessed it, 2. This is the only one that's different. This would round to 6. They were all 2 apart from that last one. Okay, I hope you did okay with those. I've left something else in the drive for you to have a go at. So have a go at that one too. And tomorrow we're going to be moving on to something else. So I will speak to you all again tomorrow.